colonialism in order to imperialistically down to the left-wing libertarians that believe that libertarianism is nothing more than a paternalistic idea that notched out in the 1930s, and then try to privatize that off of the means rather than encroaches upon the freedom of another person and going against everything that they stand for, which is also correctly the same association of which the privileges also cease to exist without having a gravitas or any niche day for the wood instead of the period for the blue brothers that were going to use an extinction to eye contamination and better breathe or contaminated explode for the severe acute respiratory syndrome of COVID-19, then produce it off of benzodiazepine and then try to concentrate it to directly intentional misuse, deliberately harmful or fatal. Yeah, of course, there's going to be a higher herd immunity than our natural immunity. A severe immunity, like severe weathering, is going to be meshed out because if you wanted to get the level, well, that's too much. Even if you wanted to comply, now you do stacking off of applications to surfaces, sidewalks, driveways, to porches and structural surfaces, even going there to tin caterpillars that are messing up the influence of contacting the poison control center, heteronormative environmentalism, and environmentalism has become the social construction of people's relation that is relative to the thought monument of their own region, and that the thought monument is going to be able to continue, just like John Casey would say. But no, even this terrible pronunciation of monument already sends him up to sit over there for trash with a speech impediment. It has absolutely nothing to do with because the $44 billion that Elon Musk has invested into Twitter in order to grain it. And that's also the attenuated assets. People are able to manipulate. They can report for no reason. Why do you give these people so much attention? Why is the reason? What is attention? The arguments I see and the titles specifically on YouTube are Hiroshi's, just like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But if they're not going to be able to continue with that meaning, then the process has already been invalid before its existence in order to the decrepit of the EU that is scarier than Russia. And depending on microastrophage, because it deleted half of the century of the people that already attacked the notion that free speech is being under attack. So why do you let it federally come at one? And also this is ambiguous with most of the offenses of UCR, murder and manslaughter, forcible rape, aggravated assault, and simple assault, robbery, burglary, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson, a reporting system, associate techniques, intimidation, threats to the place the recipient of the reasonable fear of a physical injury, vandalism, the damage and destruction of property. It includes defacing surfaces with graffiti, bias incidents. And that is one example. Or the Sovereign Poverty Law Center in 2001. Because of their true or assumed sexual preference, victims of gay bashing might be especially reticent to them and press charges and thereby publicize the incident in Megan versus Hagan in 1983. And sometimes victims who are unwilling to disclose such incidents to the police will provide information to the civil rights group defending their incidents, establish motivation for the purpose of investigation and classification and record keeping, and later the basis of harsher crimes and harsher criticism. What was this harsher expenses for retagging, retaliatory justice, right to self-management, risk calculation analysis, and fidelity to the punitive rationale, pro-arrest rationale, the Department of Policy for the instructions for dialectical materialism that come from Karl Marx has also been originated from Walsh. So that he's also another YouTuber that's justified pedophilia and justified zoophilia, justified bestiality, justified manslaughter, justified homosexuality as a continuum towards the pre-investment of a spiritual reasoning behind sexual molestation. And he's also justified Destiny's upbringing, which is also countered by the Mike Rock and the Count Dracula. Also dealing with, there's going to be the Salem of Arcade, but they're not going to be doing and really any illegal practice of breaking in insurance that involves discrimination against the Spanish people who live in troubled neighborhood. Also, the Discord logs with Poppy are more insignificant, and also the believing that he retagged there was an illegal technique of using false paperwork to sell stolen vehicles as if they were used cars. There's always going to be a rebetched. Then the private prosecution, an unusual arrangement permitted in few jurisdictions, in which a victim is entitled to hire a lawyer and press charges in criminal court, or the pre-investment to a pre-directive for the area who know that to find their own direct first-hand experience just how a victim suffers at a self-worth reserve. There's going sensationalism, where the media likes to exaggerate points and stick to the hyperbole because it jogs against Magnolia more than there is going to be a state prison of the intimate, insightful life story that sells words and become the basis for play. It's well known, right? Help them get to and put on an inevitable and the waiter, young widow, sucks and sues him in civil court suit in an intimate representing himself asserts, just like Johnny Depp's case with Amber Heard, is rise in a governing sister within the waiter's life and was verbatim worth a dime. But the jury awards her more than $7.5 million over the next decade or so, and then the intimate earns about $115 million, and that was in royalties from even in the $115,000, and the widow takes in $50,000 in the meantime, and launches 2 counter lawsuits against her, exercising her right to before the parole and board, and as she argues against his early release, and when he is turned down, the infamous convict author hangs himself in a cell, and after what he is put through, verbatim, and that the widow asserts that it's more than a relief of fresh air, but what goes around comes around, Hassbinger in 2002. So why is this regenerated for any type of conception? This occupational segregation of safety and health insurance is not going to delineate against whether we're going to use as a travel ban in order to indicate that relevance. It's not going to be immolated towards your own moral standards. That's only a privilege if you're on Reddit all day. And as dealing with the lawbreakers, the victims that could try to recover from financial losses in several ways, restitution payments directly from the offender's earnings. So to be fair and appropriate, that was going to be a reimbursement, may provide solid foundation for redemption and eventual consolation. But the reconciliation is not a misrepresentation of the belief inside of consolidation, because Vaush is also a pull-up over the reasoning. And if you wanted to say that the rights to depict exploitation of Dog Day afternoon, and the mom sees the New York State's crime and those victims were all these kidnapped victims, well then why did the reimbursement specify the Son of Sam law that was even as well as the 44 caliber, but PTSD was going to be a rhyming up? Even just because you oppose most threats as to this is and that you're not subvertigating any type of convention. But the corroborated evidence of a veteran's benefits are covered in individual offenses, which means test for the righteousness assessments of deja vu, rather than detailing a bias incident that was de facto from Donald Trump being heteronormatively engaged with Jill Barth, which she claimed that there was sexual assault in 1994. So why impermissible? It was governing a grade student that slays the 3 professors while his thesis defense, or a student climbs out of a tower and opens a fire and killing 16 and wounding 31. State police officer kills 3 students and wound 27 others during a protest against desegregation. So are we really caring about Black Lives Matter, or are we caring about tearing the country down? Well, that's the argument from the Republicans, which seems to be just like a fly in my ear. Catch out, because I have bug repellent. This is a radical leftist, such as Jordan Peterson, that is what I've heard from other YouTubers that also have no intelligence, that is a stupid person, smart person. That this would be regurgitated if the University of Texas and South Carolina State College and also Toronto was dealing with the Bill C-16 and then Bill 67. And then inclusively they say they don't say gay bill in Florida is also misrepresenting in the 1971 the Kent State University, also for Roe v. Wade to shut down abortion laws. Decrypting. So, of course. And Will Smith got the hand opportunity to smack someone on stage again, and it was Dave Chappelle, another black person. Instead of Chris Rock saying, was that Will Smith? And of course, all the media picked it up in a maximalist versus minimalist perspective. An anti-rape activist would look at this and take a minimalist stance based on a belief that they had uncovered statistical evidence that sexual assault was widespread but severely unreported problem, considering the fact that Will Smith was the one who smacked Chris Rock in the face in the first place, for Chris Rock to make the joke that was it Will Smith who smacked Dave Chappelle. But Dave Chappelle got smacked by a mumble rapper based off no life shacks examination. History of drug and alcohol, also abuse that wanders around the campus dormitory and passes through a series of 3 pre-open doors that should be locked, and invades the room of a young woman and proceeds to torture, sodomize, rape, ultimately kills. It's exponentially done. It's just like Cardi B is the role model for 12-year-old girls. Also, the reason that people involve themselves in pedophilia is because it's a diagnostic statistical manuscript of mental disorders for the insecticide, infanticide, and federal maintain for the criminal custody for the federal Peru investigation, rather than investigating in minimally fired communities are going to be retended. The reporting requirements of exceptional cause is a minimalistic attribute for social exception. Even if you use social exception, that's the paradox of social idealism. Even AKXD hat guy claimed this, and he was right for the recognition, but wrong within the stalking observation. Cyber compunction has nothing to do with the Cyberpunk 2077 of the rebels taking the tournaments and these retaliatory violence and the process of becoming assailants themselves, unfortunately. And then the environment is also coming baked in a brew of justice. It's claiming that 27% of crime rates are located in 85% of the MAGA countries, so the MAGA expedition. So if the MAGA country becomes Donald Trump's, aka Justice Smollett, claiming that the reason the government being the victims of those who claimed that there was going to be a MAGA country to radical Republicans, even though that the evidence came out specifically claiming that he just hoaxed this up as a gay crime, so it would just be a bill to come down and he would have to get all the ministry for R. Kelly, Mr. Representation of Gail. king also being given a assumption. But even if laureated, you're not going to govern the fair and property. Turning to the criminal justice system for relief, brought up by victims by 1994, these states realized that a fully profitable thinking, rather than to be able to evaluate the level of risk factoring to students in the middle of high school, or to become more aware of the dangers facing students on college campuses. And for this reason, we will also be having a more discovering whether the workplace is violent, growing, or diminishing to teach them about junior achievement. And arriving at this conclusion, out of quotes that he said specifically, if rape takes place in jails and prison among men, then what are the roots of sexual violence? Speculate about the possible reasons why the proportion of rapes reported to the police not improved over the decades, according to national criminal victimization compositions. A government compiled a list of policies such as setting up the sex crimes squad and opportunities for assistance, and such as establishing a rape crisis center, and it could be offered by government, not charitable criminal officers, and the government organizations helping to see what the services are available in your hometown. It's not going to be regulated based off of the depopulation. Firstly, and then the Canadian police officer often lectures a group of college women if they want to avoid being targeted for sexual assault, they should not dress like sluts. And his advice sparks an angry protest that goes viral, spreading 70 cities across the globe. And these slut walks, and some women are marching along defiantly wearing breasts, governing them bras and halter tops and negligees, and Liz Claiborne and as garter belts for feminists are divided, and some cheer them up for challenging the belief that women who appear alluring are asking to be hit on and sexually assaulted or raped, since many victims were not dressed provocatively, and then when attacked, others fret and scantily by and clad demonstrators expressing their opposition to victim blaming. They think that they're moving the conversation forward, but are actually insensitive to issues that polar matters of rape is more abysmal than it is dissimulated. Then you don't have to make a disingenuous argument based off of just because women wear clothes that are provocatively giving off a tone that men are going to rape them. This is not going to stop rape. Rape will even increase more if you were to do such a thing. So in other words, just get the discreditation based off of the codulation of belief. And then Bad Panda also claiming that, oh, you're just more cringe and that you couldn't provide expiation. I could. The expiation is within the Roger Williams University in 2011 for the uncontrollable urges of dominant race off of the familiar beliefs of transistians, rather than subsistence, which is also codulated in a belief system, not a manifestation of your own order to dualistically, and also interconnect that same scholarly endorsement interpretation. It fails culmination, a romantic relationship, miscommunication of a 29-year-old accuses of an assistant football coach of molesting him over 100 times during a period of 4 years, and that starting when he was 10 years old, and he claims that a middle-aged woman and another governing lavishly said he took him on to see the football games and arranged them for and him to enjoy such privileges at the campus facilities, and that was alleged abuse that took place in the coach's basement. It is given that there is also in the university's locker room, among other places. When the boy turned 14, he resisted his further advances, saying, "I'm going to tell," and but the defiant and reportedly scoffed, and that no one will believe you, and it then threatened him and his family. The 29-year-old man hires a prominent advocate for sexually abused children and launches a civil suit charging a negligent oversight against the charity for disadvantaged boys, an alleged perpetrator, and it had set up against the university knew for his championship teams. A grand jury indictment based on the sworn statements of a number of other young men, but also alleged molestations of sexual assaults by the accused leads to the worst scandal in the history of the college athletics. And when a story surfaced about the cover-up, there's incredible while it's coughing in order to resemble the COVID-19 experiment, which they claimed that they were going to do social distancing. And then it's just like pneumonia symptoms of contracting COVID instantly. The misinformation of COVID-19 is a scary, vague, expanding reception for the QAnon conspiracy theories, especially for covering up of molestation. And that sexual molestation outcomes and occurrences are interconnected within the misinformation of COVID-19, in the same way that we have drafted the experiments for heavy ambiguity rather than absurdity. Stuff to expenditure to feed a public vineyard. Oh, well, it's just Vanguard populism, and we really don't have to care about the belief in other people. And that after nationalizing Israel, what makes you think that they wouldn't do it? Argument. And this is how the world is going to be potterland. So religiocentric ambiguities for sociocultural institutions are debobulated based off a second civil war is unforgivable. Well, how's it unforgivable that many people believe that Jesus, over the purpose of coming, is spread throughout peace through the world, but they were shocked to read what Jesus actually said himself. And in Matthew 7:13, And 14, Satan, the devil, is very real, and he is deceived mankind in accepting a false gospel, a false Jesus, a false manner of spirit worshiping him. Corinthians 11:4. In addition to having his own ministers, and that masquerade as ministers of righteousness. And 13:15, and Satan called the prince of the power of the air, and who directs the course of this world. Ephesians 2:2, and has successfully and that deceived the whole world. Revelation 12:9. Families experience conflict when one member decides to depart from pagan family traditions that are man-made rather than God-made. And this was true in Jesus' day, and it was still true in ours. True Christianity does not follow the traditions of the world, many of which come from straight out of paganism. It is a different way of life based on the commands of God, and there is a great reward for those who embrace it, though that it is not easy way. And there's a young man that once came to Jesus asking what he must do to attain eternal life, and he apparently found Jesus' answer too challenging and went away sorrowfully. And that this prompted his disciples to ask essentially, what is it in it for us? Jesus explained, when the Son of Man sits on the throne of his glory, who have followed me, and it will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold and inherit eternal life. See Matthew 19:16-29. And it was difficult to fully grasp at what it state, but we could live for today for 70 to 80 years, and then what would it be? And that we can live tomorrow and have an eternal life. Or death. Or is it that simple, even though the ramifications of the choice may not be that simple, becomes complicated because we are physical, temporary beings who experience happiness and pain and joy and sorrow and here and now, and it is natural to take the easy road, yet if we choose the narrow path, there would be vastly greater rewards of bringing the subject by message to you peace of a new beginning. Even the Bible teaches that who are the Christ that is coming to will live and reign with him on the earth for 1,000 years, and this is merely the beginning of what it is a beginning, and what would it be? And that's because this is when the peace will finally come to the troubled planet, and Satan has fallen angels who followed him in a rebellion are right now ruling on earth, and numerous scriptures and that prove this. Example in John 12 and 31, 14:30, 16:11, Ephesians 2:2, the Corinthians 2, and then 4:3 before the Luke, and 4:5 and 7. And we see that results all around us, and this will change when Christ returns and remove this evil being and of his minions, and that this is the prince of power over the air, verbatim, and that will no longer direct the course of the world. This is what the religion of the non-Trinitarians are expiating. Even atheists are claiming, well, it's more than 70 years of the novel of 1984. George Orwell wrote the nation controlled by a totalitarian dictatorship by using camera spies, intimidation, and psychological manipulation. Government personified by Big Brother sought to exert near total control over people's movements and behaviors and even thoughts. And the phrase Big Brother is watching you describe this oppressive level of government surveillance. It is governing government. Orwellian is you, the governor of the insightful observer of the world, and he recognized the possibility of a government becoming more and more oppressively under or come to pass. Some of the prophecies of the Bible writing about the future, the apostle and the students of the Bible understand that the beast to be human leaders wielding power over the nations, and the power of the religious context that against this, and this is only, and that's usually taken and usually given a far like, and that life is in blood. Blood is a multi-purpose workhouse for the human body, fulfilling the two sacred functions that make life possible. If you're governing battle of the Britain to divine intervention, the house divided for the news which are unforgivable, and that a person commits a sin is a fair to abide to a covenant. That atheists believe is muthy. But if they're walking with the book of Revelation, then they don't have to have, are you overdoing yourself? But before sounding the alarms, it's important to take a step back, and that's what technology is like before the coronavirus, and where they're already invasive. And did we not bring it in self-time tutorial titled to that instantaneously to dozens of different companies, and each of these companies has the power to follow individual mobile phones, and then whenever they go, and there's never really in time. It is not a glitch in the system, it is a system. And if the government ordered Americans to continuously provide for the precise real-time information about themselves, even given with a revolt, and yet so the society that whatever the falsely given the profound choice, and that we reach a test of the consent of the hand that the data over voluntarily, even though that we don't really know what's getting that they're doing it with it, and that has caused them to those. Everybody is searching for the decade, and here's the decade of the period. So uncudgel. So why is the operability? For any means by will that seek to control others for their own personal benefit. The description of mark of the beast in Revelation 13 is totally different than the level of COVID-19 or black eye virus, dealing with the contention, or the related regulations of Alex Mercer, also dealing with the contention. But that's me. In other words, I am the prototype that is going to be conceptual for the 2019-2020 driver's exemption. The manual for any type of revised edition for Cherry Street 200 in Terminal Station, or 1605 County Services Parkway, or Carl Vision, or any overheating succession will be assassination.